I'm starting to see more people come into the room, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. And hopefully by the time we finish our introductions and everything, we will have all of our participants who are planning to join us today in the room. So hello everyone and welcome. My name is Katrina Clark. I'm in the Alumni and Development Office at King's, and I'm so glad that all of you are with us today. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our virtual Life After King's Athletes event. Although we are not presently on campus, I would like to start today by acknowledging that King's is located on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabeg, Haudenosaunee, Lenape'wuk, and Attawandaron peoples, all of whom have long-standing relationships to the land of southwestern Ontario and the City of London. The First Nations communities of our local area include Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, Oneida Nation of the Thames, and Munsee Delaware Nation. This land continues to be home to diverse Indigenous peoples whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors of our society. Our event today is brought to you by Alumni and Development and graciously moderated by King's President, Dr. David Malloy. Our goal is to give you an idea of the types of careers our alumni have and how they got there. We hope you'll use this information wisely as you give thought to your own life after King's. And now, before we get into things, I will introduce our guests. I'm just going to go in the order that I see people on my screen, and I don't know if that's the same order that you will see people on yours. But when I begin to introduce you to our panelists, if you wouldn't mind giving a little wave, then our guests will know who you are. I'm going to start with Steve Pellegrini. Originally from Sarnia, Steve attended King's to study history and played soccer in his second year. After his King's student days were over, Steve worked for a summer in the registrar's office and was later hired at the main campus to work in the registrar's information office. During that time, he became assistant coach of the Western men's soccer team for 2 seasons. Steve later graduated from Concordia University with a graduate diploma in sports administration and completed an internship at the NHL office in Montreal. This was the start of a long career with the NHL that has led to opportunities with different teams and departments in the organization, including working with the Edmonton Oilers, the New Jersey Devils, and his current role as Assistant General Manager for the New York Islanders. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
Next, I see Sarah Villani. Sarah graduated from King's with a double major in psychology and thanatology in 2019. While completing her studies, Sarah competed for the Western Mustangs track and field team, where she achieved an OUA bronze in the pentathlon, the Bob Viggers Rookie of the Year award, an OUA gold in the pentathlon, an OUA silver in shot put, and a U Sport silver in shot put, became a bronze W recipient, and earned the women's track and field MVP. After winning the RBC training ground in 2018, Sarah was recruited to bobsleigh, where she now competes internationally. Sarah is in her entering her third year on the national team, and is currently in Calgary, Alberta, where she is training to qualify for the Beijing Olympic Games in February. Welcome, Sarah. Next on my screen here, I see David Easter. David was born and raised in London. He graduated from King's in 2014 from the Catholic Studies for Teachers program. During his undergrad, David was a member of the Western varsity curling team. And after graduating from King's, David attended the University of New Brunswick in Fredericton to earn his Bachelor of Teaching in 2015. Following that, he moved to Drumheller, Alberta, where he taught for 4 years at a K-12 school. In 2019, David returned to his hometown and has been employed by the London District Catholic School Board ever since. David lives outside of London with his fiancée, Hannah, and their adorable corgi, Molly. Thank you, David. And finally, we have Mick Lismore. Mick graduated from King's in 2010 with an honors specialization in psychology and a minor in philosophy. During his time at King's, Mick played on Western's curling team for 3 years, attending 3 CIS U Sport national championships and earning a purple blanket. Academically, Mick earned OGS and Shirk scholarships as well. After King's, Mick went on to complete a master's degree and a PhD in sports psychology at the University of Alberta. Mick began working with the national wheelchair curling team in August of 2019. They won silver at the World Championship in 2020, and Mick was named head coach later in May. He looks forward to coaching at this year's World Championship in Beijing and at the 2022 Paralympic Games, which will also take place in Beijing. Thank you to all of our athletes who are with us today. Now I'm going to turn things over to King's President David Malloy to tell us about yourself and get the show started.
Great, thanks, Katrina. Good morning, everybody. Yes, I am the president at King's, but for this morning, maybe more importantly, I'm also a Mustang. I was on the Mustang track team from 1979 to 1982, and I ended up being the head coach while Bob Viggers was on sabbatical one year. So I do remember that when I was head coach, I thought this is a gig that I want to continue hanging around a university. So I credit that opportunity with the first step in me ending up hanging about with university folks for the last 30 years or so. So I've been here at King's for the last 2 years. I've been out west in University of Regina before that. I also did a bit of coaching out there too. But loving King's. This has been a fantastic experience, and every alumnus that I speak to almost has the same feeling of affection and nostalgia for this great institution that I'm really honored to be connected with. So I was part of this event last year, and it went really well. I think we only had an hour, and it was far too short. But to get the insights from our varsity athletes and how they've translated their work ethic and their experience into professional life is really a common theme and a really important one. Ultimately, sport is, when you think about it, it's kind of a silly thing that we do, but it's the translation of that hard work and that dedication that really make a difference in our professional life. So I hope we can be talking about that this morning when we get to questions. So before we do get to questions, I'm sure you're all aware that we've had a tragic loss to the Mustang community. A young man that was part of our varsity hockey team. And to recognize him, I've got written statements from his coach and one of his teammates that I'd like to share with you right now. If you're not aware, this is a remembrance of Sean Demonk. He graduated in 2011 in King's Criminology program. He was tragically killed while serving Penn Wynne and Lower Marion Township in Pennsylvania as a volunteer firefighter on July 4th, 2021. So his service to the community continued after his career as a varsity athlete here, and it's a tragic loss for us all. So if you'll let me, I'd like to read these comments from Clark Singer first, the Mustangs head coach, and a colleague, fellow teammate, Patrick Willett, who graduated in 2009. Sean was one of the most positive and easygoing young men I have ever coached. I remember first seeing him play junior hockey from the Leamington Flyers. He impressed our coaching staff with his incredible skill level and effortless skating. We saw him play 4 or 5 times that year and knew almost immediately he would make a great Mustang. What I didn't know until I met him in person was what an outgoing personality and positive outlook he had on school, sports, and life. I still remember assisting him and his roommates move into their first student house over behind Althouse in the summer of 2007. Even then, he seemed mature beyond his years. He played his first games with us in that 2007-28 season. He worked incredibly hard to grow his game and proved to be a great teammate. In his second year with his team, his responsibility increased and he played a greater role both on and off the ice. That season, he helped lead us to only the third Ontario University Championship in the 50-year history of the program. We earned a trip to the National Championship tournament that year, losing the Nationals by a goal to the University of New Brunswick. It was an incredible experience and playoff run for the team and Sean. Over my desk in my home office, I have our championship picture that was taken on the ice after our OUA win and trophy presentation. You cannot look at that picture without noticing Sean and his infectious smile. I'm not surprised that with his love of the game, he continued to be involved with the game as a coach, winning another championship with the Windsor Spitfires a few years later. His passing was a terrible tragedy, but I'm not surprised at all knowing Sean. I'm not surprised at all knowing Sean that he showed such incredible bravery and selflessness in the face of grave danger he knew was ahead. Sean will always be part of our Mustangs hockey family. Thank you, Clark. And now comments from his teammate, Patrick Willett. The sport of hockey is a great way to meet great hockey players, but it often leads you to meet great individuals. Western hockey put Sean on my path, and we became teammates and friends. Sean was a dedicated teammate who brought intensity, work ethic, fun, and laughter to the dressing room. Sean was also very dedicated in the gym, as he was often one of the most fit teammates I played with at Western. It did not come as a surprise when I learned that he was a volunteer firefighter. Aside from his passion for fitness, his selflessness was another quality of his, always putting the team ahead of his own performance or accomplishments. Munker, as we called him, was a very fun person to be around, as he was always up for practical jokes or a quick chirp. His smile was always lighting up the dressing room. The 2009 Queen's Cup Championship will forever be a memory that we will share with Sean. In order to honor Sean's memory, his teammates have decided to create a scholarship, the 2009 Sean Demonk Memorial Award. I speak on behalf of all of our teammates that we will miss him dearly, but we will always remember and honor his character and his bravery on that tragic day. So those are wonderful comments, everyone. Thank you, and please keep Sean in your thoughts and your prayers, and his comments from his teammates and his coach are testament to what a great individual he was. All right. Well, Katrina, are we ready to begin questions? Okay, I'm looking forward to this because really anxious to find out what you folks have been doing and I guess what role Western Mustangs played in your careers. So the first question, could you tell us about your experience as a Kings student athlete? Considering your answer, how you managed your time, were your professors supportive? Hopefully they were. And are you still close to your teammates? So I'll just randomly go around the squares, and maybe Mick, I'll pick on you first.
Sure, thanks, Dave. So I was actually an off-campus student. So I was born and raised in London, so it was about a 50-minute drive to the campus for me. And my sister also went to King's, so I was already fairly familiar with the school, and I got there. I was pretty lucky related to time management, I think, because I had that comfort of having, my parents at home to support me. And so if I was really busy, that extra meal here or there, or, just helping out with whatever I needed was really, really helpful. As far as the professors were concerned, it's definitely a big part of my experience at King's. I definitely made a point of talking to each of my professors right at the start of the year and sharing with them about me and the fact that I was an athlete, and that I was, I had some upcoming events that I might be missing some time during. And they were really helpful. I think that was a really big part of going through that experience successfully. Was advantage of King's, obviously with smaller class sizes, you get to know professors fairly well, and you often will have a professor for more than one class, especially as you narrow into the end of your degree and you see the same individuals more often. You're still close to your teammates. I definitely still talk to some teammates. I'm not in really close touch with any of them, but one kind of interesting thing is that my wife for a long time that I was a student athlete, so there definitely is a link to my sport in my life as a varsity athlete. Connects to somebody really important to me in my life. So that would kind of summarize my experience in a very short period of time there. So
thanks, Nick. Sarah, let's go to you.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking back to my days as a university athlete. When I was little, I did gymnastics, and like that has a lot of hours of training. So that actually prepped me for university to just be like, what you do is train in school. That's just what you do. So I guess I was lucky because I've like for many years prior, like I've had to manage my time with school and sport, or like with a limited amount of time for many years. So it was more of an easy transition for me, I would say. It was just always what I've done. The great thing about King's is with class schedules, I'm just thinking back, I'm pretty sure I only had one semester where I had to have a Friday morning class. And so that actually worked out really well for my track schedule because I don't think I had to miss any school. Maybe I think around CIs, I'm trying to remember, but the professors were always like super understanding, and they knew like it was just for a short amount of time. So it might have been like just 1 week's worth of class that I would miss. So they would completely understand, and like students are pretty willing to help and share notes, which is great. Because yeah, I think we all just kind of understand. And with teammates, it's actually kind of funny. There's a girl on the national bobsleigh team. Her name's Kristin Bushnovsky. She was a Western engineering student, and we actually did track and field together. So when I was in first year and she was in fifth year, we were on the track team together, and now we're on the bobsleigh team together. So we've kind of come full circle. So yeah, we've maintained contact. We're teammates again. And yeah, it's just kind of funny because yeah, we've just come full circle.
Nice. That's great to hear. Actually, I'm still playing golf with a guy that I ran track with in 1979.
That's awesome.
So those relationships last a lifetime.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Steve, how about you?
I'm the oldest and least decorated athlete on the call. So King's, the experience was really good with the professors. What I found is it gave me a reason to actually go and speak to the teachers. It was just an opportunity as an icebreaker, which you're always looking for that in life. So I think it helped me try to bridge the gap with the teacher, and then they could put a face to a name. I wasn't the greatest student or again, the best athlete, but I found that I did do better in school when I was playing because you had to adjust your schedule, your life schedule a bit. You had to make decisions to stay in and do work as opposed to going out and doing something. So overall, the experience was good. I only played the 1 year. First year, I didn't even try to go. Second year, I tried out. Third year, I was hurt. So, but because I did that, it gave me an opportunity to later work with the coach when I was done as a student to coach. So what I found, and I think it's great that Katrina and Jana are doing this, is you learn a lot from different situations and everything builds towards something else. So playing you know, I wasn't a starter, but playing for 1 year led me to meet the coach. And from meeting the coach, I got to meet the athletic department when I was coaching. And when I applied for the graduate program, the head of the athletics, Darwin Samodiak, wrote me a letter of reference. So if I didn't play soccer, who knows if I would have got into the program to be where I was today. But King's, as everyone talked about, the smaller classrooms enabled you to feel confident to approach people for help, which, you know, at the end of the day is all you really need.
Yeah, Steve, that's a really good remark about your connection with Darwin. But all of us, you know, the people that we meet incidentally that connect, you know, open one door, and we, you know, whether we turn right or turn left, it's those people like Darwin. He's a wonderful guy, can really make a difference in your career. So yeah, thanks for those comments. David, over to you.
Yeah, some of my sort of experiences probably echo Mick's, in the sense that I lived at home as well when I went to King. So sort of similar to that, like fortunate to maybe have my time management aided by family support. I remember going into university, like kind of worrying about the time management thing. And it was actually another curling coach that had said to me, like he had been a former athlete as well at Western. And he had said that he found that being an athlete helped him to actually manage his school workload better because it forced him to be disciplined. You know, he didn't have time to sort of slack off as much as maybe the average student. And I remember kind of taking that to heart going into university and trying to sort of keep that in mind myself. And I found that, you know, while obviously the demands of sport, both for Western and then just playing outside of school, you know, it was busy, but, you know, it was able to force that to make me disciplined and stay on top of schoolwork and stuff like that, on top of the other demands of life, of course. Yeah, I mean, and similar to everyone here, like, you know, professors at King's, I can't think of a single one that wasn't receptive when you approach them. You know, they were very supportive, and you know, like Mick said, like over time you start to have you know, a lot of the same professors kind of over and over, which is a good thing, at least in my experience. And you know, people they were accommodating, and you know, again, as long as you were open with them and upfront, I found that it was never an issue in terms of whether it was an extension or you know, moving certain dates around, you know, whatever you kind of needed to do, as long as you were upfront with it. And I think like that was even just a good life lesson, right? Like when it came to shifting into a career, right? Like that, you know, most things in life can be adjusted around and moved as long as you're upfront and honest with people about sort of the situation. So I think even when I moved into actually working, I think taking some of those sort of lessons, you know, helped in that sense too. So yeah, professors were always really good that way. In terms of teammates, I mean, I moved away after my time at Western for a number of years. So, you know, with the distance, I sort of separated from them in that sense, but still the odd time, you know, social media helps, of course, still connect with some people every now and then. And it's obviously nice to reconnect. And obviously COVID hasn't really helped a whole lot of that right now, but you know, hopefully as the years continue on here, we'll maybe reconnect some of those relationships and get to see people and hang out and stuff like that. So yeah.
Great. Thanks, David. Okay, next question. And I'm really interested to hear your responses to this one. So it relates to what you're doing now. And what I'd love everyone to hear is, I guess, to what extent did your experience as a varsity athlete influence maybe your choice of career, but maybe more importantly, the success that you now have in your career? I guess what role did being a Mustang have in that success? And so maybe Steve, start with you.
It's interesting because I'm 5'7" and I'm working in hockey. So what I really think, and I touched on it, is everything's a building block. So I have a passion for sports my entire life. I wanted to be around it. I was around it with every opportunity I had. Working with coaching after playing only fueled my interest in trying to be involved in sport. The hockey has always been, you know, you go back, I think I learned math by doing hockey stats with my dad when I was young. So hockey has been everything. So being able to learn, you know, what actually helped, it was interesting. The head of the program at Concordia was excited that I came from Western. And I don't know who he knew or what he knew, but he was excited about it. But the athletic side, I think, just fueled or kept me interested in trying to do something in sport. And, you know, you get lucky in life and it sort of spun from that. But definitely being an athlete kept me focused on what my end goal really was to be in sport in some capacity. For the longest time, I thought I was going to end up working at a university in the athletic department. And that was sort of my goal when I went to Concordia, was to try to work in that field. And another door opened, and it was fortunate that it worked for me to stay in hockey.
Thanks for that. Yeah, when I took over from Bob Viggers that 1 year, I thought that is the best job in the world. I strayed from that, but maybe in hindsight, it's been a tough last couple of years. Maybe being the track coach would still be the best job. Sarah, how about you?
Yeah, so what I guess actually Western Mustangs, like the track program, has a bit of a history of developing bobsleigh athletes, because for instance, we had Alex Kopach come through the Western program, who he graduated with an engineering degree as well as a physics degree. And he was our 2018 Olympic gold medalist, and he's a world champion, and he's my coach. And so he's a London boy. And yeah, like, so when I entered into track and field, like we didn't cross paths with track at Western, but I heard whispers of his name and like this bobsleigh athlete who is super fast, but a thrower. And then obviously, like, and then of course we also had Kristin Bushnovsky, who went to the 2018 Olympic Games as a spare, and she now is the ice house record holder in Calgary. So she's doing very well, and she was a Western track athlete. And then there's myself, who I'm still new to bobsleigh. I'm just, as it was mentioned, I'm just entering into the sport, or into my third year. So I'm still new, but I've already had some successes, I must admit. But yeah, like, I guess just being in the environment of the Mustangs, it kind of led me to bobsled. If you'd told me when I entered university that I was going to be a bobsleigh athlete, I wouldn't have believed you. But I guess there was a bit of foreshadowing, because yeah, we developed some good bobsledders.
Yeah, neat. Thanks, Sarah. David?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, like, I mean, Western and Kings, I think growing up in London, you know, always had that Western connection, and, you know, seeing the Mustangs play, you know, different sports and stuff like that. It was always kind of fun. Like we'd go to watch different sports when I was a kid and things like that. And it was always, you know, you look up to some of those athletes, and so the idea of maybe being a varsity athlete was always kind of something that, you know, maybe aspired to do growing up in London. So I think that was a big pull for me in terms of picking Kings and Western. I mean, Kings specifically, I went to because of the Catholic Studies for Teachers program. It was pretty much brand new at the time when I got into Kings and went to Kings. And, you know, at that point in my life, I thought that, you know, teaching was what I really wanted to do. And you know, and it was obviously just a great success for me in terms of the relationships I made at Kings. Again, both with professors, students, and then through sports as well. You know, and so, you know, it's hard to say exactly how being a student athlete maybe shaped my career. In some ways, the career I chose didn't really lend well to sport in terms of the time commitment with teaching. It's not like some careers where you can maybe have a little more time off and things like that. At least the time off doesn't line up well with curling being in the summer mostly for teaching. I mean, the time off, but you know, even when I think about like when I moved to Alberta, you know, it was nice. Like I didn't really know anyone. And the one thing that I was able to sort of use to immediately connect with people was curling, and, you know, was able to get in and start playing right away in a league and stuff like that. So just, you know, the way that sport can kind of connect people and, you know, immediately give you some kind of common ground, I think was just a, you know, for me, being a pretty young person moving out to a new province, it was nice to at least have that sort of one thing that quickly sort of set myself up and things like that. So, yeah.
Thanks, David. Mick.
Yeah, so as Katrina mentioned, I'm currently the head coach for the national wheelchair curling team. But I really can't talk about being in that job without talking back to being a student athlete, even as far back as being at King's. Interestingly enough, out of my undergraduate, I applied to some master's programs. Initially at the U of A, I didn't get in, but the golf coach at Western at the time, who I knew through curling, was also like a national curling coach, kind of supported me as a reference, and I was able to get into my master's there. So even just that first door opening and me turning right through that door happened in part because I was a student athlete connected with someone. From there, I continued to be a student athlete at the U of A, competed, coached, and I was doing my schooling much to the chagrin of my supervisor at the time. And I kind of continued to play and coach even through the end of my degree. And so when I finally finished my PhD, which took quite some time, the big decision was whether I keep playing or I kind of turn into an opportunity for a career in the sport. And just through the relationships I had built, all because of sort of some of those early decisions, I was able to just reach out and apply for, you know, a position at Curling Canada, and they were in need of a coach in this position. And I absolutely love my job. And so really, I look back, it was the people that I had gotten to know through sport and connected through school that led me to where I am now. And I'm really grateful for that. Sure.
Thanks, Mick. As kind of a follow-up question, I'd like to ask you about passion. All four of my kids ended up being varsity athletes. One of them in track, two in wrestling, and one in cheer. I think what they found through their experience, as I apologize for the noise in the background, folks, if that's distracting. What all four of them found in their sport was an absolute passion for the game. And as they get older, my youngest is 21, the eldest is 31, but they're taking that desire to be passionate about their careers with them. So I know you're all very successful. I'm just wondering about you know, your passion for the sport, and do you feel that was kind of the impetus for the passion that you have for your careers? So maybe Sarah, could I start with you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like I have always loved sports, so there's always been something within inside of me that like has this passion to do and to just keep saying yes to opportunities. It's interesting because when I was a gymnast, I was like, being the fact that I'm like almost 6 feet tall, like I was not going to be a good gymnast. That wasn't really going to work out for me. And I didn't actually think the Olympics was for me, but I just had this drive to continue to do sports. And I just kind of kept saying yes to opportunities. Even when I won the RBC training ground, I was recruited to a couple different sports, and like, I just kept saying like yes to, like, you know, I tried rowing and I tried rugby, I tried cycling, and then I tried bobsled. And it's funny because my first experience in a bobsleigh, I actually crashed. And most people, when I tell that to, even other bobsledders, they're like, I can't believe you came back to the sport. Like, that's phenomenal. But obviously there's something deep within inside of me that I'm like, I just have this drive this passion towards this sport. And like, I love training for bobsleigh. I really do. The sprint, like I have to sprint like a track athlete. I have to lift like an Olympic lifter, but then I also have to somehow figure out how to push a bobsled. And it's quite fun. The ice house is really fun. And like, I've been able to go to some like pretty cool places. And for World Cup this season, I'm going to be able to go to a couple new places. Like I'm going to go to Sigulda, Latvia for the first time, which is going to be great. In about almost 2 weeks, I'm going to actually be on a plane to Beijing to do an Olympic track test event, which is really cool. So yeah, like I guess the passion has always been there. It just needed some time to figure out what I was going to do, and it landed me in bobsled.
That's a great story. That's great. Mick, let me go back to you. Sorry, I'm mixing things up. I'm keeping you guys on your toes here.
Yeah, I mean, I think like even as a player in high school, I remember doing a management project in grade 11 or grade 12, and the teacher had no idea what I was doing, but I was running the stats on my curling team. And so funny enough, fast forward, I don't know, 15 years, that's a random guess, but and I'm doing data management, looking at curling stats now. So I think the analytical, mathematical chess on ice part of the game, I've always really been attracted to and really enjoyed, and trying to, find patterns. As a player, I probably at some point started hating losing more than I loved winning, and I really enjoyed trying to explain the sport to other people, but was maybe not as good at playing it as I thought I was. So that switched over to being a coach, I think really aligned with my passion for the parts of the game that I really enjoyed. And really, connecting with individuals is something that I've always, connecting with teammates and communicating effectively is something that I've always really taken pride in and enjoyed. So that part of it, I think, connected well with me too. So yeah, definitely a passion for parts of the game. And I think I'm highlighting those things now in my career.
Neat. Thanks, Mick. David.
Yeah, like I think the first thing that came to my mind when you asked your question was just sort of like I've always had a pretty fierce competitiveness to me, really in terms of anything like sports, board games, whatever, right? Like I'll make a competition out of whatever and do whatever I can to win. And I remember when I started my first year of teaching, there was like we found out there was this award. It's an Alberta thing for like the top first year teacher. And so each individual school like can nominate, their best first year teacher, and then it kind of moves up the chain from there. And the school I was teaching at, there was myself and another new teacher. And I remember like the second I heard that was a thing, like basically there was a possible award. To me, I was like, okay, great. It's a competition. And I mean, for better or for worse, that was almost like a motivator to, just work that much harder throughout the year. And I will say I did get the nomination, so I was happy that I won in the end. So, it was good in that sense, but, just that, I think that drive and that, it's important, whatever field you're in, that you have some sort of drive and motivation. And I guess for me, that was what it was, at least at the time. So yeah, I think just that, that idea of passion and commitment and things like that, definitely sport really instilled that from an early age. And I'd say mostly for the better.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations. A little bit late, but congratulations. Steve, over to you.
Passion's a great term because I think it applies to everything though in life when you're trying to make decisions on what you want to do. So I played soccer 10 months of the year, and the other 2 months I tried to recover. But anything you're doing, you should have a passion for. So the trick is to try as many things as you can to find what you like and what you don't like, and then you find your passion, and that gives you motivation to move forward in everything. So through sport, you think about it, I live in the States now, but when Canada's playing any sport against anybody, I have an unbelievable passion for Canada to do well. So sport unites us in so many different ways, and it motivates you to do so many different things. It doesn't matter what sport, you get your adrenaline, as Dave said, you have that moves you. So absolutely. Did my passion for sport help me to do what I'm doing now? Beyond a doubt.
Great. Thanks, Steve. That's a great answer. Okay, I think we've got one more question, and then Katrina, I think we'd open it up to the audience to ask questions, maybe, if we've got time. So the last question is, what advice would you give to a current student or recent graduate looking to enter into your field? So Steve, maybe I could start with you.
Wow, you gotta have luck. Like, what's funny, I'm gonna go back to, even in school, I'm just gonna lay some groundwork because it's interesting to me. When you're finished school, you're gonna have an internship at a job. And when you're on that job, the most important thing to do in your internship is learn about yourself more than learn about the job. Because you're gonna learn what you like and what you don't like. So partway through, you know, I remember I wanted to go into economics at first, and my first year prof literally talked me out of going into economics. I just didn't enjoy the class, so I went into history, and you know, I was fortunate to have some amazing teachers that kept my interest in history. But for me, you know, to get into hockey, as a Canadian, everybody wants to get into hockey at some point. A lot of the people I talk to, it's being confident in what you do. And that comes from being involved in things at school. Be involved in as many activities as you can. You interact with different people, so you have the ability to express yourself. In my particular position, you have to take a lot of information and make it as concise as possible to give your boss the most informed, or to give him the information to allow him to make the most informed decision possible. So that's, you know, when you're doing your work at school, you know, you read a lot, but you have to get to the head of the pin a lot quicker than you may think. For me, the sports program at Concordia obviously opened the door with an internship that led to a job, but there was a lot of people who did the sports program at Concordia who ended up working for national federations. They were in Ottawa, specifically working for different sports. Take advantage now to build relationships with your professors, with people you interact with, because at some point, somebody you meet now is going to help you. I got an internship at the NHL office because of something I did 5 years earlier at King's. I helped a person I was involved in student council, and I helped somebody who was questioning how to get involved with student council. 4 years later, or 5 years later, 4 years later, I guess it was, that person was going for lunch with the individual who was making determinations of who got an internship with the NHL offices in Montreal. She saw my name on her desk and said that I was a good person and that she should give me a break. And they weren't going to hire interns that year. So, you know, be a good person, and you never know who's going to help you at some point down the road.
Well, that's great, Steve. Thank you for that. Mick, let's go to you.
Yeah, so I think this is it's an interesting question because there's kind of two parts, right? The current student or recent graduate element of it. So I think there's some practical things that I looked at, and then there's some other just sort of big picture themes. I think one thing was, you know, if you know where you're going, if you have a plan of where you want to be, make sure you know what it will take to get to that goal. So, for example, I initially wanted to go into the sports psychology field and do a degree in counseling psychology. And had I known the requirements to receive certifications for that field, I would have definitely sort of checked off more boxes on the way there, and sort of gotten into the field a bit earlier. So knowing where you might receive certifications or what the expectations are if you want a career in that field I think are really important. So that means it's sort of a practice of just knowing what the big things are, to the doors that you need to unlock to get to your destination. I had this idea down of investing in yourself fully, and not just as a student. As much as being a student athlete at times, maybe took away from some academic opportunities, it opened more doors for me in my life than anything else. So I think just, it's easy enough when you're in school to spend a lot of time focusing on school, and then you're finished school and all of a sudden the world is different, right? And so having those things that you can carry forward outside of university that are a part of your life that sort of develop your identity further. It's no different than not completely immersing yourself in being just an athlete, but just, pursuing more than one thing, I think is a super important idea. For current students, I think one thing that I found really helpful and was probably the most important thing for my success as a student was to develop a system that works for you and use it. So as much as it's really, really important to, immerse yourself in enjoying your studies and learning and keeping an open mind, I found a certain specific system of note-taking and attending lectures and merging those things together that made my learning more efficient. And so a lot of being a student was around, for me, learning how to be an effective learner first, and then immersing myself in the topic. So just thinking about ways to optimize that process, note-taking and merging lecture notes and going to lectures and adding things in. I actually did most of my studying once I had everything together as opposed to during the class. And then I think the other thing I had down here was just prioritize what is important to you when making your class schedule. So mornings were not good for me, so I didn't take classes in the morning. One professors was really important to me, so those two things I really emphasized. But for other individuals, different things are important. So I think really just making sure that you set yourself up for success when it comes to setting a class schedule. So yeah, I guess my answers were more probably for current students. Maybe that first one, knowing where you're trying to go and making sure you know what it takes to get there, might be for everyone. So yeah, that's me.
Great advice. David?
Yeah, it's lots of good advice already, so it's hard to really add a whole lot of good stuff there. But I think for me, like, having been a teacher now for like 6 or 7 years, and kind of having made that decision early on, I think the big thing is just to, when you're in university, especially assuming, you're kind of the average university age, right out of high school, that sort of stuff, is just being open to other possibilities, and things like that. Like, I mean, right now, like in terms of my teaching role, I'm actually only substitute teaching because I've kind of made a shift in careers and stuff like that. And I can't really get into a lot of detail on that. But, like, I still am involved in the education sort of sector and that sort of stuff. But, I just think, like, having that open mind and realizing that things aren't necessarily set, and that, yeah, you're going to change as a person and things like that. It's just important to have that sort of open mindset, and especially, in today's day and age where there's just such wide access to communication and ways to connect with people. You just don't know what's going to be around the corner and what could be out there for you. So I just think that sort of openness and willingness to try different things and communicate with different people and at least consider different options and ideas, can serve a person pretty well in terms of their career. And I mean, by no means would I say that I have everything figured out right now. I mean, I don't know where things are going to go still, but I think that that's just an important thing is realizing that maybe the choices you make when you're 20 years old may not hold, when you get to be 30 and beyond, and that you're just going to change and it's a good thing, it's exciting. So, embrace that possibility. That's
really wise counsel, David. I don't think any of us know what we want to do when we grow up. So I think that's a good way to be.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, my wife would say that's because I'm immature. I think it's because I'm curious.
They use that line.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, Sarah, over to you.
Yeah, I don't know if I can add much more, but I guess going off the theme that seems to be a bit of my life is just kind of like saying yes to opportunities. Even when I was in, I believe it was third year, I was really struggling to find scheduling like for my heptathlon, pentathlon training because it's just so all over the place. And the guidance counselor I was speaking with, she was like, why don't you do thanatology? And I was like, what is thanatology? And she started explaining it and talking about it. And I found out like King's, it's very unique to King's. And a lot of the courses are online. And so I said yes to this opportunity. And now I have a major in thanatology. And it's really great. And I love actually teaching people about that degree because so many people like are like, what is thanatology? And usually I get the joke like, oh, is it the study of Thanos? Like the Marvel character? I'm like, no. So it's been really cool, like educating people on that and like kind of seeing their, like testing the waters and seeing their reaction to like that I studied death. But yeah, I would say just saying yes to opportunities. I do think it is important to keep that balance because yeah, at the end of the day, you don't want to just say that you've like, you know, you only studied and like, I don't know if this is true, like, but from what I understand, when you're applying for jobs, like they do want to see a well-balanced person. So that's also important as well. So yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents.
And a great 2 cents. That's really wise counsel. I think as varsity athletes, we grow up fast because we put ourselves through experiences and the rigor of the sport that some people never get the chance to do. So those were fantastic answers. So I'd like to throw it up now to our audience. And if anybody has any questions for this fantastic panel of former Mustangs. So if anybody has any questions, I think Katrina is having some technical difficulties. We see her, but I don't know if she's
Can you hear me?
Oh, there you are.
Oh, yay, you can hear me. I can't see you guys anymore.
Oh. Okay.
But if I know that Jana had posted something in the chat there. If you can put your questions into the chat to everyone, I think I can still try to direct those for you. I just can't do it from the operating channel. So if you've already put a question in the Q&A, it's possible that it's there and I just can't see it. But if you put it in your chat to everyone, then I think I should be able to see it.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in the Q&A, Katrina, so that's good. But maybe we'll give that a sec or two.
Yeah, sure. And while we're waiting, I will just take a moment here and I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us today. Our athletes who are, you know, coming in from all over Canada and into the US. Thank you so much for being here with us today. This has been an amazing event and a testament to Kings and to our Kings athletes as well. And I also wanted to thank everyone who is joining us as a viewer today. I hope that you enjoyed your Life After Kings experience, and I invite any feedback that you would have to come back to me at Kings. Well, yeah, I still don't see any questions. I don't know if you can, Dave.
Well, no, I can't. But frankly, the responses to the questions that we asked. You covered a lot of ground, the four of you. So I guess on behalf of Kings, and maybe if I could say on behalf of the Mustangs, I just want to thank you so much for representing Western and Kings and the Mustangs so well. You're really tremendous ambassadors for all of us, and thank you for all that you've done and for all that you continue to do. And also thank you again to Clark and Patrick for those really touching words about our colleague who has passed away. Thank you for the Demonk family for joining us. And I wish you all a very happy weekend and happy homecoming. Please don't go to FOCO. I had to say that. But do take care, everyone. And we'll see you next year. Thanks, Katrina.
Thank you, Dave. And thanks to everyone. Happy homecoming.
Okay. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.